What's going on, everybody, and welcome back once again. My name is Jordan, also known as JMonster, and I hope wherever you are out there, you are having a wonderful evening. As for myself, I aim to make that evening just a little bit better. Today I've got a 4 versus 4 on patch 0.97. Yes, we will be returning to the test build after a few weeks hiatus. If you guys haven't seen the latest Minas Morgul Siege on the official 30 Reforged channel, I recommend you guys go and check that out, because it is balls to the wall awesome. Probably one of the coolest sieges to come out of 0.97. I say that with no exaggeration whatsoever. It is really, really good. But today, like I said, it's going to be a 4v4. We're going to be playing on the Minas Tirith Downs map. And for those of you who are uninitiated, Minas Tirith Downs is a new map that will be available for you guys in patch 0.97. It is themed after the wilderness of Cardolan, and it is quite expansive. There's a lot of different terrain. There is hills. There's this village here in the center. There's these rocky outcroppings as you move through the hilly area surrounding the village on its, I believe it's its southeastern side. Then you've got these large open areas, river crossings. All in all, it's got a lot of terrain, and there's a lot of different ways to play this map, which is my goal whenever I make a new map. And yes, I made this one. Took me like 2 days of solid work, but I'm really proud of it, and I hope you guys are excited to play on it. But without any further ado, let's take a look at some of the army comps, and then we can jump into the replay itself. Hope you guys enjoy it. So naturally, the first army we're going to look at today is that of Cardolan, and that is going to be controlled by me this time around. I have, I believe, 2 units here of the upgraded mercenary cavalry. They're actually going to be getting a new model, which it's still got a very medieval theme to it. They're going to have close-face sallets instead, and a little bit of a different shield. Although they might keep the same shield. We'll see. We will see. Moving on over here, I've got 2 companies of the Menhiria Spearmen, which is the name that's going to replace all of the Minas Tirith units, as Menhiria is an actual location within the setting, whereas I believe Minas Tirith was pulled from some fan fiction somewhere, which isn't necessarily bad. Not, dumping on fan fiction. You can do what you like, but we've decided to ground it a little bit more in Tolkien's universe. And over here, the Mercenary Guildsmen are a very, very different unit. I haven't implemented the new model yet, just because I've had some problems with skeletons and blah-de-blah-de-blah modding troubles, first world problems. But they will be getting maces, so no longer will they have swords. They're going to have a little bit, I think it's a little bit lower damage. They're actually a good deal smaller instead of the 180 that they were before. They've still got low morale, but they will have an armor-piercing component to them, which will hopefully make them a little bit more of a useful addition. Not too many people brought them in previous iterations. So I'm hoping that changes a little bit with the addition of the armor-piercing utility. And on that note, it does actually give Cardolan a lot of armor-piercing, which is probably a good thing. Cardolan's got some fairly weak morale, and fairly low defense, like melee defense values, and their damage isn't amazing. So the armor piercing should help them out a little bit. I've also brought 3 Greenway Garrison Spearmen. I'm also going to be pairing them with some Wardens of Tir Gorthad. We're going to help them stay in the fight for far longer with their 3 morale in 50-meter buff. I've also brought Minotaur Roman Guardians, just 1 company of them. A couple units here of the Greenway Archers. So my long-range skirmishing capacity has been hamstrung a little bit at the cost of bringing some deadly sharpshooter units. So I've got 2 of the Minas Menhiria. That's right. They're not Minas Tirith anymore. Been over this, Jordan. Come on now. Menhiria sharpshooters, 2 companies of them. They've actually been greatly improved, so they've been made a little bit more elite. So they've got better morale than some of the other Menhiria units. So they've got 12 instead of 9, and their damage in melee and their armor, not their armor piercing, their melee defense has gone up a little bit. So they're a little bit more suitable as infantry. They will run out of ammunition fairly quickly, though, being crossbows. So you will have an opportunity to use them in melee, no problem. I've also got 2 units of Greenway Garrison Footmen, so I'm basically got a militia to your front line and a lot of more powerful specialists to my army. So my front line is really the anvil to the hammer of all of my other units. You can see my 2nd company of Spearmen and Macemen over here. Another company of my whatchamacallits, Mercenary Cavalry, and then to top the whole shebang off, we've got 1 unit of the Royal Court of House the Rondor. No longer are they just a generic Dunedain model. Now they look damn cool, courtesy of the Cowering Coma, who always does nice work, let's be honest. I don't know if we can see them here, but I've got 1 company of the Hearthguard of Almansul as well. And because of their very large morale buff, I'm going to be parking them dead center in my army because they are going to be the cornerstone of my entire army. It's amazing how important this unit is. I mean, they're so important that I'm actually trying to think of some creative ways to make them less important, but who knows? Who knows? Moving on now to my nearest ally, I have the army of Dol being commanded by Engsvitz. And for those of you who have not seen hide nor hair of Dol in 0.97, they've undergone some pretty serious changes. So here we have the Parathil Riders, new class of unit that's been added to Dol Amroth. We've got the Parathil. These guys are actually pretty nice. They don't have a penalty versus cavalry, as most horse archers tend to. Neither do they have a bonus, so they're just kind of decent. But they also are really high tier horse archers. Quite expensive, fairly low in number, but they are worth it for sure. Over here we have the Knights of Cobos Haven. Knight units in general are going to be changing a fair amount. I think we were experimenting with some ways to make the melee knights charge a little bit less impactful because of their really high base damage. We might add like a secondary slot that's basically a clone of what they use here, but with less charge damage. So yeah, always looking for ways to improve. Engsvitz has also brought some Dor-winion swordsmen, some Tornostian shield bearers, and of course Dor-winion pikemen and the halberdiers as well. Really important units here. Polearms are a really, really big part of Dol Amroth's front line, I found. And you can mix them in with all kinds of different things to give yourself utility on whatever you need. You can mix them in with cheaper militia units, like the Dor-winion swordsmen, and then spend more on your cavalry, or you can invest a little bit more into your front line and get some of the very fine Dol Amroth men-at-arms, who, while being a little bit smaller than many of the other managed counterparts, like Arnor and Gondor's equivalent men-at-arms units, they are a little bit more elite and a little bit better armored on the base. So here, got some Dor-winion archers, got Guards of Cobos Haven, which we can't see because they're obscured by the canopy. There we go. Guards of Cobos Haven, some Tier 3 marksmen, not a unit that we often see. Not because they're bad or anything, just because they're a little bit more expensive, and Dol Amroth has a lot of other things to spend their money on. Thelen men-at-arms right here, some more Dor-winion archers. Got some Swan Knights. Very deadly unit, the Swan Knights. I think he's got some Rangers hiding around here somewhere. Obviously, we can't see them because Rangers like to be hidden. But he's definitely got some Rangers kicking about in the brush somewhere. But that's going to do for him. Let's move on this way. Let's see what we have here. We have the Sons of Eorl, one of the best units in Rohan. And Rohan is going to be played by Lord Griffiths, who I've never played with before, but you know what? He did really, really well in this game. I was very impressed with his performance. So let's move on and take a look at the rest of his army. Got some First Marshal's Bodyguard. Red Shield's Verkenbrand, a nice little hybrid unit for Rohan. It's actually melee cavalry and a bow cavalry as well. So they've got a lot of uses. They're quite sizable as well, as many of the Rohan cavalry units tend to be, except for their elites, which are standard size. And then we move on to the infantry for Rohan, which is not so bad any longer. Previously, in 0.96 at the very least, they were very, very high in number, which struck me as odd for a lot of reasons. One, that it's strange that the Rohirrim throw away lives the same way that the Eastern factions do, or the Orcish factions do, and it also seemed weird that they'd have so many people dismounted when they are a horse nation. So what we've done is we made them a little bit smaller, actually a fair amount smaller, but their quality has gone up quite a lot in relation to that. So we've got some Riddermark archers here, decent infantry, Eastmark spearmen who have javelins, just 2 javelins though, they're lower tier, but still they get the job done. More Eastmark spearmen, Riddermark archers, Westmark marshals who are just terrifying looking. Very, very strong, cause fear, armor piercing, things like that. Eastmark axemen who have their armor upgrades here, which makes them quite passable men-at-arms actually. Yeah, really, really high damage men-at-arms, but a little bit lacking in terms of defense. We've got at least 2 units of the Shieldmaidens of Rohan as well, who will be getting a new model, possibly for 0.97, possibly not. And the Airraid of Aldburg over here, really strong heavy lancer unit. They got some good buffs in this patch. I think they got a little bit of extra morale, a few other things as well. I know there's some other units in here, but I think they're hidden. I think he's got a company of the Westmark or Riddermark Lancers, Riddermark Riders, the heavier mid-tier Lancer for Rohan. I think he's got some more archers and some other nasty things hidden in there, like the Meduseld Guard, for example. But let's move on over here. Yes, I didn't really intend to reveal them this way, but yeah, they're getting a reveal here, and I'll follow this up with a faction breakdown video a little bit later. But we have the Shire, they're an interesting faction. This is very much a result of Curl wanting to do something weird and creative, as Curl likes to do. So we have the Shire faction as a minor faction. And they combine some unique units along with some units that already existed in factions such as the Rebels. So we have the Bjornings here, but they're 3 HP cavalry. Very, very lightly armored, however. They are armor piercing, but they don't have any bonuses against cavalry, but neither do they have a malice either. So that's kind of nice. Sheriff of the Farthing, which is like a lower tier melee cavalry, but they also throw a lot of stones, which not quite as high damage as javelins, but as a consequence they've got a little bit more ammunition. But still, they can be an irritating thorn in your side, especially if they manage to flank your heavily armored troops. Got some battling brandy bucks here, which I think these guys are not lock morale, but they're just like an armor-piercing unit. The Shire is a lot about like efficiency and getting good trades, so a lot of their, almost all of their units, in fact, are very, very lightly armored, very susceptible to rangers and pikes, and a lot of things that a lot of factions have at their disposal. But they have great numbers. They're pretty cheap to field. And like I said, you can get some really good trades off them. So we have the Longbottom Mob here, which is a rock-throwing unit with a fair amount of ammunition. Proudfoot Protectors, which is a bodyguard unit. They also have crossbows. And believe it or not, they will whip out pikes if you get too close to them. It's pretty scary. It's the Shire's only pike units. We got some Band of Brass Archers here, who are no longer available to Arthedain. Don't worry, Arthedaine's got some buffs to compensate before you start freaking out. They also are armor-piercing in melee, as are, I believe, the Tukish Hunters. We've also got Ents here. Ents have been toned down actually quite a lot. They've been very, very greatly changed over the last while, so they're now in a very, very reasonable state. Got some Farmers of Buckland here, which I think these guys are anti-cavalry, and they're also lock morale. One of the very few lock morale units that Shire has access to. Also shock units, so very offensively oriented. It's just a big old mob of hobbits that you run across the field of people. There's really not a ton to playing the Shire. We've got Gandalf's Fireworks. Now this is merely a temporary model, but it does mirror the Hwacha from Kant, and it kind of works along the same principle. In fact, it is more or less the same unit. But that's going to do it for the blue team. Let's see what Team Red is bringing to the battle today. Across the field from the fearsome fighting Shire rats, we have Isengard. This is actually a bit of a grudge match, since at the end of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, yeah, spoilers, the books are nearly like 100 years old at this point, so get over it. But Saruman actually visits the Shire, and chaos ensues. And so we're gonna have a showdown today between Saruman and the Shirelings on more or less equal footing. Pardon me. So that's pretty exciting. And the Isengard army is going to be commanded by Blindness, one of our contributors and our testers, and I think one of our donators as well. He just does a lot of stuff. But he's got a couple units of crossbowmen. He's got some half-orc spear guard here as well to back them up in the event of cavalry charges. You know, you don't want to let those sheriffs of the Shire run wild. Neither do you want the skin changers charging you down. Let's be honest. I got some warg riders here as well. At least one company of warg riders. Uruk-hai Berserkers. Yes, very strong unit. Quite numerous, but as you probably have guessed by looking at them, they have 15 armor. No, I'm kidding. No, they have a terrible armor value. They are all melee defense, and even low-tier missiles can shred these guys, so you want to be careful with them. So that's kind of to balance out the large numbers that they have. Got some Dunlending clansmen here, and of course the base, the building block, the cornerstone, and other metaphors as well of any Isengard army. We have the Uruk-hai infantry and the Uruk-hai pikemen mixed in together in a big, scary black phalanx of doom. Very scary indeed. Probably about 3 companies of each there. Got some more Dunlending clansmen to back them up. A sizable Isengard force indeed. They're going to pair quite nicely against the large numbers of the hobbits. This is going to be a tough fight for the Shire. This is the kind of army that can really tear the Shire asunder. I got some Uruk-hai crossbowmen here as well. More half-orc spear guard. And another company of warg riders. In the center, we have the Champions of the White Hand, a unit that the Shire really doesn't have much of an answer to. They could probably get chewed up a little bit by the skin changers or by the Ents, especially those 2 units working in tandem. But other than that, there's not a lot here that can really, really scare them. And I know that they are here somewhere. I want to find them because they look so freaking cool. Pardon me, I'm dealing with a little bit of allergies. Yes, there they are. Haha. We we have the Trolls of the White Hand, which are, pardon me, gonna clear my throat. Oh, I feel so much better. Yeah, the Trolls of the White Hand. I don't think you guys have seen very much of them, but damn do they look way cooler than the derpy models that we have on 0.96 Live right now. It's just so night and day. Really, really cool unit. I think it was actually done by Chan based on the tabletop model, so fun fact for you. Moving on over here, we have a Gondor army being commanded by R.H. Narius. The more I go through this, the more I realize this is a great feature show-off for all of the cool stuff that we have in 0.97, as I think every new faction that we've shown to you so far is actually present in this game. But in any case, got some Gondor infantry here without their armor upgrades. Mithrandir's retinue, a fearsome general's bodyguard indeed. Gondor spearmen on the front lines with their first level of armor upgrade. Got some Gondor archers as well with their first level of armor upgrade. Very sizable Gondor army. Like, look at this. Just seemingly endless hordes of the men of Minas Tirith. Got some Guard of the Citadel right here, armor-piercing spears. Nothing you want to play with. Got the Wardens of the White Tower as well. Axemen of Lasarnek. Fountain Guard, a lot of AP on this lineup. I think we've got 2 companies of the Osgiliath Guard as well. Gondor Spearmen, 1-2 with first level of armor upgrade. Nimlothian Honor Guard, looking sexy as hell. Also another armor-piercing spear unit. Pinneth Galen Cavalry. And up front here, got some Marksmen of Carandros. I think they're going to pair up with Gondorian archers there. And I know that there's at least 1 unit of Rangers of Ithilien hanging around here somewheres. So a very interesting Gondor army. Deployment's a little bit strange, but you know it's the custom map really. It does sort of oblige you to do some weird things, which is kind of what I wanted. But yeah, little note here on the Marksmen of Carandros is that they're actually really good. If you get close to them, I mean, they've got the little sword there on their hip, but honestly, they whip out 2-handed swords and they will beat your ass into the dirt. So, you know, don't underestimate them. Don't just send any old cavalry after them because they will get cut to bits. Moving on over here, we have the army of the Saxons, obviously, right? Because that's what Lord of the Rings needs. Is just a little bit of realism injected into it. No, this is Dor-winion, and if you guys have not seen my faction breakdown video for Dor-winion, you should go and do that. Some of the prices, actually really just the prices have changed on the Dor-winion units, and their numbers have shrunk a little bit from 160 to 140, but everything else in that video will hold true probably for the long term. So I recommend you go and check it out if you're interested in learning a little bit more about Dor-winion. But yeah, Elvel and Vanguard right here. I think there's 2 companies of them. Got a bunch of Elvel cohorts forming up the center. There's also some more Quenti pikemen mixed in there as well, but they're not really shielded, so they're a little bit vulnerable. Elvel cohort, Elvel marksmen, who have laid down a nice line of stakes here, as I expect they were maybe thinking I would flank them with cavalry, but I had no intention of doing so. And back here we have the pride and joy of any Dor-winion army, that being the Elven units. So here we have the Nandor Glade Riders, an 820 charge unit, very, very offensively oriented, but, and this is a really big but, they have next to no armor. These guys will melt to just about any kind of missile unit, so you want to be careful with them. Another unit of Elvel and Vanguard here, mixed in with the Nandoran Glade Lords. Yes, some of the names have shifted around. I'm not particularly happy about it. I like the old Elven names, but, you know, sometimes you're outnumbered and you just gotta suck it up. Over here, have another unit of the Nandoran Glade Riders, and we can't see them, but there's actually a couple units of the Morquenny Stalkers around here who've changed a little bit. They got 1 less armor than they did in the faction video. And they also have Cantabrian Circle, and they can hide anywhere. So, sneaky unit. Very, very sneaky indeed. But also very, very strong. They're like a melee cavalry bow archer. Derpy. Mounted archer cavalry. I think we've got some Villain marksmen mixed in here with some Vanguard as well. And then on his second line, he's got a couple companies of javelins from what I recall. And now, we move on to the king. Dun-dun-dun. Dun-dun-dun. Fun little reference there for you guys who have watched Mrs. Doubtfire. But in any case, we have the army of Numenor being commanded by Lord Master Eothod, which is a sort of a ironic person to be playing this, since I know he loves his lore and everyone is, you know, on the fence about adding Numenor into the mod, since obviously that breaks quite heavily with the time period. But screw it, they're cool, and I like their playstyle, and you'll just have to deal with it. So we have the Elder Nobles here, not a melee knight unit by any means. They are, however, a 2 HP melee cavalry bodyguard. So they hold their own, and they've got a lot of armor too, so they're quite tanky. Over here, Romena Spear Guards, armor-piercing spears. Very scary. About 16 morale on all of these Romena units as well, by the way, so they can be quite sturdy, although we have been having interesting issues with sudden morale shocks, causing a lot of things to break, but, you know, we'll figure that out. 2 companies here of the Romena Marksmen. Worth noting that they apply -2 morale to whatever they shoot for about 15 or so seconds, and they also are armor-piercing, and they also deal damage in the area. However, all of this is balanced out with a very reasonable 180 range, putting them within the same amount of range of other high-tier bowmen, and they're also about 30 range longer than elite crossbows. So if you can get crossbows trained on these guys, they fall apart pretty quickly. They've also only got 5 ammunition, so they will expend their ammunition pool very, very fast, which it can be a good thing, it can be a bad thing. It does kind of support a more aggressive playstyle with Numenor, since obviously you want to be having units work in tandem with the morale debuff these guys can provide. So you have to be a little bit aggressive, and then you aren't necessarily going to expose them to counterfire. So it actually does work out as a system, in practice at least. Over here, Royal Legion of Armenelos, buffed a little bit, got some extra men. The Elder Nobles. Ah yes, the Heralds of Erendi. Very, very strong. They're heavily armored with a small shield value, 2-handed sword unit, and they are also lock morale, and I think they cause fear, and I think they give a nice inspire buff, so they do a lot of stuff for you. They are quite expensive at 1400s, and their numbers are obviously predictably quite small, given that they're an elite unit like that. Got some Romena Legionaries who are going to be replacing the Romena Marines. They no longer have a missile damage or a missile component to them, but they are still pretty damn strong infantry. Much smaller than the old Numenorian units, about 20 less men, but their armor has gone up quite precipitously. Wow, I'm tripping over my own tongue here. As has their damage and their melee defense, so they're a really solid unit. You just have to back them up with some other stuff. Now we're in our Royal Guard here, no longer a 2 HP unit. They're just big and 1 HP and potentially very scary. Numenor's only real high-tier archer pick as they supplement everything else with the Belly Gear units. Got some Nar Sentinels here, one of Numenor's few remaining pike units. I think that's pretty well it, although there may be another unit of cavalry hiding around here somewhere. But yeah, a lot of Romena units, a very small core with Numenor, but their units are all very elite. They hold their own pretty well, and you guys will see that in this battle. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. Look at this. The stage is set. It's a cool map. We've got some good players. We've got all the new factions. You really couldn't ask for more. Without any further ado, let's get into it. So there's a lot of stuff that's going to happen in this battle, and it is all going to happen all at once. So I'm going to try and keep the speed a little bit lower than what I normally would. But there's a few things to note here about my deployments. You can see I've got all my cavalry here on my left wing. And I've deployed it here because there is at least a comparatively narrow expanse between myself and where I know Numenor is going to spawn. I know Numenor is going to be over here on this island, and I want to try and use that in a few different ways to try and help the strategy of both myself and my ally nearby to Lamroth. So, seeing that there is only one real place that Numenor can deploy, I've tried to bottle him up and maybe waste even a little bit of his time as he moves to engage my forces. My fondest hope was that he would come all the way around here with the majority of his army, which was going to give myself and Engsfitz a little bit of time to rush down Dor-winion and to destroy them quickly and then isolate Numenor, because we were definitely going to need it. Numenor is a top-tier infantry faction. Most of my front line is militia. It's efficient, but it doesn't have a ton of killing power. So I'm going to be using my ally here, Engsfitz, as kind of the first wave, and we're going to move in together and try and crush Dor-winion, while hopefully Numenor moves around this long way to try and catch us off guard. But Eothod does something a little bit unexpected. Can't really see it right now, but he is kind of beelining for my left wing. But he's going to notice that most of my forces aren't going to be present over there. So he's going to actually split his army and move to support his ally at the same time as he moves around with a flanking force. So what I'm going to do in response to that, well, you guys will see, but my main plan is, it's basically Fabian tactics. I want to avoid battle with this superior force for as long as possible in order to get him into a position where I'm able to attack him with strength. And with some sort of overwhelming advantage, or at the very least minimize the advantages that Numenor has over Cardolan. So my forces here are kind of just to be a nuisance, whereas the main bulk of my army has actually moved over here towards Dol Amroth. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things up a little bit here, and if we pop over to the other side, we can see that Isengard has begun to make a move on the hobbits of the Shire. Now, this is pretty bold here. 65 warg riders charging down the sheriffs of the Farthing, and it seems like Steward of Dale didn't really see this coming. So the sheriffs of the Farthing were in the process of relocating and reforming when the wargs take them at a disadvantage, and as a result, they are going to get massacred. I'll look at the destruction here, and oh, is that the bloody hand of Cain there on one of the banners for the Orc Riders? Ooh, that's just blatant mixing of two very separate franchises. But the Warg Riders are definitely getting the better of the sheriffs in this engagement. They are going to chew them to pieces. Luckily, however, Steward does have some reinforcements nearby, and he's going to move in with those hobbitry and arms, and that is certainly going to even out the fight here. But the Warg Riders, you know, they're not too bad, and they've got multiple HP, so they'll be able to take this for a little while. And they've certainly managed to clean out a lot of the sheriffs. Now you can see them pulling through the unit here, so they're going to get some passing shots as they move through, and those sheriffs are going to be ultimately destroyed, and you can already see them beginning to be shaken. So half the unit gone now. A really nice hit, a really nice surprise attack here from Blindness. Now would be a really good time to pull the wargs out of here and preserve their numbers. There's not really anything nearby that can harass him on the retreat, except for perhaps the band of brass archers, but they were already in trying to relocate, so he could probably pull himself out of melee and extricate himself from this difficult situation without too many more losses. But unfortunately, Blindness seems to be leaving his cavalry engaged here with some armor-piercing spears, and the hobbitry at arms are going to have the better of this fight. And it's not really looking good for the Wolves of Isengard at this point, but at least he managed to trade a unit of cavalry for another unit of cavalry. I don't think the sheriffs really have too much left. 13 men left in the unit, basically combat ineffective. Blindness is going to go for a retreat here, and it looks like the wargs may be able to squeak out. Ooh, a little bit of lag there. I'm not so sure. Oh, they are wavering again. Could see them break, but oh wow, surprisingly enough, they are going to get away. But once again, they're going to turn around, and I just don't understand the reasoning for this. Definitely a waste of those warg riders, and you can already see them getting to drop here. Much of their HP has been shaved away from the majority of this unit, and it's only a matter of time before they are ultimately destroyed. I think we could see nearby some of the Bjornings, so they're moving in support. And if those warg riders aren't dealt with swiftly by the spears, the Bjornings will certainly get them. Another big push here. Looks like he's going after the band of brass archers. And the hobbitry at arms have taken alright casualties. This warg rider has probably paid for itself, but it just doesn't seem worth it to me. That's a warg rider unit that you could have for later. It's certainly a decent counter to the high damage but low armor and melee defense of the Bjornings. So that's going to be all she wrote there for those warg riders, and they are not too long for this world. Popping back over to the other side, we can see the extent to which Eothod has split his force between harrying my left wing and supporting his ally Dor-winion in the center. And Dol Amroth, their first wave assault is already underway, and the Elvelyn are holding their ground well. But one thing that they cannot abide is a decent pike wall, and Dol Amroth certainly has that in spades in this particular comp. So once those pikes engage, without the support of the Morquendi, the Elvelyn are going to be pretty well helpless. Some exchange of volley fire flying overhead as both sides vying for supremacy in the skirmish fight. Diaz got some killed with River Patrol nearby, and they've got an okay-ish angle. I think we could see some friendly fire here. But Dol Amroth is kind of struggling a little bit against the Elvelyn. The Elvelyn are very, very sturdy, and they're going to need a little bit more of a thicker line than this if they're going to contend with them, especially where those Morquendi are present. This is the place where the missiles for our team need to be concentrated. The Morquendi are extremely vulnerable to arrow fire with that low armor. But I can see that my ally is beginning to suffer here, and I'm going to move up with my phalanx and give him all the support that I can. So you can see a general advance here on the part of my center, and we're going to try and lock down this fight and beat back the Elvelyn just through sheer numbers at this point. The Elvelyn have the quality, but there are far less of them than there are of our troops. So I'm going to leverage the numbers, which is one of Cardolan's biggest strengths. But of course, Numenor and their reserves are now nearby. Pardon me, guys. And they're going to be able to move forward and lend some serious aid to the Elvelyn. So this fight has really only just begun. Meanwhile, over on this side, I've just been ceding ground to the Numenorians. You can see me pulling back here. I've got my Mid-Wraith Spearmen and my more important bodyguard being given a little bit of a screen by my mercenary cavalry. My mercenary cavalrymen are going to be on the front lines for a lot of this fight as we try to stymie the inexorable advance of those Numenorian legions. Over here, I'm beginning to maneuver my 2 units of mercenary guildsmen onto my wing because I can see those Numenorians lining up, and there's a big old gap here on the line that just screams, flank me. So I'm waiting for the Numenorians to commit, and I'm going to hit them with some of my AP troops, and I've got some of my my crossbows nearby in a good supporting position as well, and I begin to shift my reserves from my right wing, my armor-piercing Mid-Wraith Spearmen, over to my left. So I'm preparing to weather the inevitable storm here. Meanwhile, over in the center, Dol doing their best, and I think there's a little bit of cavalry play over on this end as well. You can see the Gondor and Glade Guards moving in to try and check the advance of some of the Knights of Cobos Haven. I would give that fight to the Knights of Cobos Haven if they can catch the Gondor and Glade Lords on their own. With a little bit of spear support, however, things are turn around really, really quickly. It looks like Rohan, good buddy Rohan, has arrived on scene with some of their elite cavalry. Now, Swan Knights going for a rear charge against this blob of Elvelyn, both cohort and the Vine Guard. And while they're not Lancers, attacking from the rear or from the side like this is going to go straight to the armor save of the Elvelyn units, and it is actually going to be pretty effective. You can see a lot of the Elvelyn go down there in that surprise assault. In big battles like this, it's really easy to lose even a unit or 2 of cavalry, and that can certainly be your downfall if you are not careful. But all throughout the line here, it seems like it's going pretty well with the addition of my reinforcements. But wherever the Morquendi pikes are, we are really struggling. This is probably a pitfall of our strategy here, is that you can see a lot of arrows focusing down units like the Cardolan River Patrol, who have certainly been useful in thinning out my center. But we're not really focusing one of the biggest threats on the line, and that is the Morquendi pikemen. So something we needed to pay a little bit more attention to in this battle for sure. All along the line, though, it's kind of give and take. We're winning in some places, the Elvelyn are winning in others, especially with the addition of the Numenorians. And now, speaking of the Numenorians, you can see that they've arrived in force on my left wing, and this is going to be a desperate struggle here. So I'm going to maneuver my cavalry. I've got a couple things in mind here with my cavalry. I want to try and separate the Numenorians and make them fight in a few different places. I can definitely see them moving forward in these big blobbed up formations like this, so I'm going to try and take advantage of that, try and encircle them and surround them and do whatever I can. I'm also going to pick them off with my crossbows wherever possible. Crossbows are very much the bane of Numenor, and it is my great equalizer in this fight against these renowned warriors. My troops in close quarters are no match for them, but if I can bog them down, if I can keep them separated and prevent them from fighting together and use my AP units wisely, then potentially I can swing this fight in my favor. I've got a little bit of support over here as well in terms of the Parathil Riders, and of course my Royal Court of House Thorondor are currently hidden, and that's kind of how I want it to stay. So I'm going to go ahead and just turn it down a little bit here while I explain one of the strategies that I had in mind. So you can see I'm trying to make a very obvious menace of my mercenary cavalrymen. There's a good target for them over here. If I could surround the Eldolandi nobles, I might be able to knock them out of the fight. It would certainly cost me a lot of lives in terms of my mercenary cavalry, but hey, my mercenary cavalry are far less valuable than a unit of the Eldolandi nobles. They are really, really tanky, and going into the late game, they can certainly be a big nuisance. So I want to make a public menace of them, make them an obvious target that he's going to maybe concentrate on, and then try and open up some opening in his lines where I can use my Lancer units to particularly good effect. Especially against these units here of the Romana Marksmen. They are my public enemy #1 with those armor-piercing arrows, and you can already see they're starting to shoot into the back of my mercenary guildsmen, and they have a pretty nasty morale debuff. So I've used my 2 units of Mercenary Guildsmen here to engage a unit of Romantic Spear Guards, and on their own, they would smash these guys to pieces just through sheer numbers and with the help of that AP. By getting shot from behind by armor-piercing arrows, forget about it. These units are really, really going to struggle in this fight, and it's already an uphill battle. You can see some more Numenorian reinforcements moving in, so things are not looking good for me on my left wing. But let's pop on over in this direction. We can... Ooh, a little bit of lag. We can see a cavalry fight going down in the woods here. The Nandor and Glade Lords going face to face with the Sons of Eorl. This is going to be a tough fight for them. The Glade Lords are not bad, but the Sons of Eorl are just a little bit better. They've got a higher anti-cavalry bonus, and they've got higher defensive stats all around, except for their melee defense, but that is negated somewhat by the arrow support that these guys are getting, and of course by the very high attack of the Sons of Eorl. So the Nandor and Glade Lords are suffering quite grievously, thanks to the arrow support and thanks to the fearsome skill of the Sons of Eorl in melee. Looks like there's some First Marshal's bodyguard here as well. So in addition to all of that, the Nandor and Glade Lords are thoroughly outnumbered. Down to 22 now. They've lost almost a third of their unit. Another volley coming in, hitting a lot of these units from behind, ignoring their shield value and their melee defense, and going straight to their armor. And they're just beginning to drop like flies. Let's take a look at how things are going over here. It seems like the Shire so far has been content to plunk away at the reserve units here of Dunlin and Clansmen in Isengard Center. Another sally here from some Warg riders, the second company of Wargs, I believe, unless the other one is still present over on the wing. No, indeed, that is the reserve company of Wargs. And Blindness is going to go for another frontal assault, but I don't think this is really worth it. I don't know what he intends to accomplish here. There's not really a lot going on for him in terms of good squishy targets to charge down with those wargs. So I hope he ultimately ends up pulling them back, but it seems like he's just going to go for it. Go balls to the wall, go ham on those hobbits, but they're going to shoot him down as he's on the approach, and he's already lost quite a large chunk of those warg riders, and he is losing more by the moment. So I think we're going to see another warg unit expire and not really accomplish too much. And over on the other side, still another unit of the Sheriff of the Farthing, so yeah, I don't know what he's hoping to accomplish here. Over in the center, Rohan, for the most part, has held their ground. And I'm not going to lie, we were feeling a little bit betrayed, I think, at this point in the game, when Rohan wasn't doing a ton to come over and help us with Dor-winion and with Numenor. But that being said, they do have a lot of cavalry in the area, and they have quite swiftly dealt with a unit of DI's Knights. But Gondor has come in now with Peanut Galen cavalry, and I think the Mithrandir's bodyguard is in there as well. And they're putting a little bit of pressure here on the First Marshal's bodyguard and on the Sons of Eorl, who are down to 9 at this point. This looks like these guys got a really nice charge off on them while they're dealing with the Nandor and Glade Lords, who I don't think were completely destroyed. No, indeed, many of them actually managed to escape from that fight, and they're going to fall back towards Dor-winion's lines and begin to be a bit of a nuisance for us. Now, this is a real danger over here. It's something you definitely want to be careful about when you place your stakes, especially in heavily forested areas. Stuff like this can unfortunately happen. So Diaz trying to maneuver the Morroquindi Stalkers, who are very, very squishy, but unfortunately he's going to maneuver them right onto his own stakes, and it is going to be a bloody massacre here. That being said, he didn't have much choice but to try and move them, but he actually limited his ability to maneuver and to escape our arrow fire by placing his stakes in such a way so far behind his own lines, not really close to the enemy's lines, but really close to his own. And the result here was a complete disaster for the Morroquindi Stalkers. You can just see them flying off their horses here. Top 10 anime betrayals, as many of them fall in a fairly embarrassing fashion. Oh, look at this. This unit here might rout down to 2. Very unfortunate. But the line fight, however, seems to be going well. And again, the Morroquindi Pikes really proving their worth here as a support unit for Dor-winion's battle line. They are the teeth of a Dor-winion battle line, them along with the Glade Guard. Really, really high damage, good melee defense, but again, very vulnerable to arrows, something we have neglected to take advantage of. Now, my Hearthguard of Amansul, I think I was trying to shoot at the Dor-winion cavalry, but they started to walk away a little bit, so ultimately my Hearthguard here ended up walking into a melee, which is not really where they want to be. Over on this side, though, my crossbows have managed to focus down the Romena marksmen, and I've managed to, I think, destroy most of this unit. Some of my Mercenary Guildsmen have routed off. We're going to go ahead and slow it down just a little bit here, because it seems like everything's kind of happening all at once. So my Minhir the Spearmen have engaged the Romena Legionaries, and because they were able to more or less surround them and get this Crescent Moon off, they are actually doing quite well, even for Spearmen, and the Minhir the Spearmen aren't really high damage, but that armor piercing is helping them out a lot. Over here, though, however, things are a little bit more even in terms of the formation. They're able to match me pretty well in length and breadth of our formation. So my Menhirs Spearmen are actually being beaten back. And some Romantic Spear Guards here coming in from the rear, charging into my Menhirs Spearmen. Not a good thing for me at all. And over here, some of my Mercenary Guildsmen are routing off. I think they're getting shot in the back by the steel bow, so you can hardly blame them for running in fear, but they will be back at some point. Over here, Swan Knights, Cavalry from Dol Amroth, doing their best to try and stem the tide. But I've brought more of my crossbows over here, Minotaur Roman Guardians doing their best to support our lines, and one good thing has come out of this. At the very least, my Menhirs Spearmen have got Numenor to blob up, and Numenor was already fairly blobbed up on the advance. I was very, very hasty since they wanted to get into position quickly, I imagine, and help out their ally. But that is going to play into my hands a little bit, especially with my missile units, and I will be able to rack up a fairly sizable amount of kills with my crossbow units. Ooh, this is really ugly. The Swan Knights here going for a frontal charge, but they are just getting last samurai'd as the Romana Marksmen, and I think there's maybe another unit here of the Numenor Royal Guard who are going to lay down some serious fire into them. And Ixfitz is going to maybe think twice about this engagement. A little bit of indecision here, as I think he's trying to turn around, but he realizes that it is far too late. So the Swan Knights are going to go in there. They're going to do their best to try and knock some of the HP, maybe off the Heralds of Arendil, but they are going to get flanked here by a unit of Romana Legionaries, and that is not going to last very long. Over on this side, though, well, it's going okay. My Menhirs Spearmen are beginning to lose ground here as the Numenorian Legionaries start to take the advantage in this fight, and it's not going to be too long before they begin to crash and burn. However, over here, things have gone reasonably well. There's a lot of black cloaks on the ground, a lot of dead Numenorians, and I managed to accomplish that more or less with a single unit of my Mercenary Guildsmen. Now, I wasn't able to be all sneaky with my cavalry. Part of my problem was that I didn't make my formation tight enough, so I kind of got snagged moving through the melee here, and I wasn't able to get into the Romana Legionaries, and now that is pretty well a foregone conclusion. But Numenor still pressing forward, but I am managing to get some beautiful shots off here with my 2 units of crossbows that I'm focusing them down with, and this is really going to hurt Numenor. This is how Cardolan hurts Numenor. An infantry fight, like a straight infantry fight, if you take that and you have no other strategy, then you are going to get rolled over. Frankly, you will get rolled over, and it's your own damn fault, because Numenor is so dominant in a one-to-one infantry fight. They've got the numbers, they've got the training. It's just one nasty thing. So I'm going to try to time my crossbow volleys here with some cycle charges from my Royal Court of House Thorondor. I'm going to get a pretty decent charge here, and that armor-piercing damage and the mass of those mounts is actually going to kill a fair amount of the Romana Legionaries. You can see them just flying through the air, get pancaked by that heavy cavalry, and this unit of Romana Legionaries is going to drop precipitously. Let's see what else we have going on here. So, Dol Amroth has sprung into action now, and I've got some of my Mercenary Guildsmen who have come back from routing, as I said they would. They're moving in to try and delay, and that is the name of the game over on this side. I want to delay Numenor for as long as I can. I want to make them fight a war of attrition, which is one of the things that they can't really do terribly effectively with their small unit sizes. Look at this, my Menhirs Spearmen really doing their best. They've managed to kill almost half of this unit of Romana Legionaries, which is all that I can really ask from a 600 cost Spearman against an 850 cost infantry unit. They have done extremely well. Another charge here as the Romana Marksmen are trying to reform. Ultimately, I am going to get the charge off that I wanted of the Romana Marksmen, but it's not going to be with the timing that I really desperately needed. And those Romana Marksmen were able to just dump their ammo into the back of my Mercenary Guildsmen. But one unit has stood firm, and they've actually managed to break most of the Numenorian resistance. Over here, ooh, some nasty stuff going on behind the lines. Parathale Riders getting caught out by the Nandoran Glade Riders. I think, however, some of the Dol Amroth Cavalry has managed to make it behind the lines in the center, and this is really what we need. The Nandoran Glade Lords are here to counter, but the Knights of Kobos Haven, they still outnumber them, and they're still melee knights, and they'll be able to beat the Nandoran Glade Lords in a one-to-one fight pretty easily, assuming stuff like this doesn't happen, where those Nandoran Glade Lords are able to get repeated charges off into the Knights of Kobos Haven. That is going to turn that fight around. Over here, however, Glade Riders doing their best to fight against the Parathale Riders. However, the Parathale Riders, they don't have a Malice versus Cavalry, so they're actually not terrible. They're not amazing. They're not melee cavalry by any means, but they're also not too bad. And then once this fight has been won and the Glade Lords perhaps are driven back, Ixfitz is going to be free to continue hammer and anviling the center here. Although I don't know how much time he's going to have, can see a unit here, a sneaky unit of Spear Guards have managed to ninja their way into my back lines. And I was actually winning here previously, but the pressure that they've put on my back, the back ranks of my troops, has been decisive. And now Numenor is in the center fight in force. And while we're winning in certain places, Numenor and the Morquendi Pikes are swinging the balance. Dor-winion has moved in with their reserves. The Adelan Halberdiers here doing extremely well against the Helvellyn. Too many words. The Helvellyn cohort. This is the kind of unit that you want to try and use to counter them, if at all possible. Armor piercing, high damage. The Helvellyn aren't going to be able to stand up to it terribly well. Over here, another cavalry fight. And this was actually really, really sneaky. So the Pinnisgalen cavalry basically got attacked on 3 sides, as did the Mithrandir's retinue, by some pretty fearsome Rohirrim units. The Sons of Eorl are in the fight. The Red Shields, as I said, are also melee cavalry hybrids, and they've got about 12 damage plus 5, so it is nasty, even against a heavily armored unit with 2 HP like the Mithrandir's retinue. And you can see that they've actually taken some, well, reasonable losses there, and they are continuing to mount the longer they stay in combat. Tenosian Shield Bearers being very aggressive, moving forward to try and disrupt the back lines here. Maybe get the Helvellyn Marksman offline. That would be a great win for Engsvitz and take a little bit of pressure, but it might be too little too late. We've still got some reserves here, but you can see some breaking beginning to happen as my center begins to fall apart. And Dol Amroth, a little bit better trained and sturdier than Cardolan. However, it is only a matter of time before they begin to fall away as well. In the face of Numenor and Dor-winion, it's a tough pair to face. Over on this side, though, things have gone reasonably well. Oops, some Romano Legionaries have managed to make it into my Minotaur Roman Guardians. However, I have put them onto defensive formations, so they will continue to fire at these oncoming units of Numenorians. And you can see another charge here by my Royal Court into the Heralds of Arendelle, and they are starting to drop, but a third of the unit has already been killed. So my delaying tactics are bearing some fruit, but I can only keep this up for so long. I'm going to run out of tricks pretty shortly here, and then Numenor is going to be able to take my left wing, and that's going to be all she wrote for my center. Over here, Mercenary Guildsmen, I tried to use them to counter the flanking movement here from Numenor with the Royal Legion of Armedalos. Maybe try and bog them down for a little bit and use my crossbows to try and shoot them, but I just haven't had the time yet, unfortunately. Ooh, what do we got here? More Quinny Stalkers getting massacred. Nandor and Glade Lords moving into support as well. I actually didn't even see this in the battle. I had no idea that there was knights behind my lines. Meanwhile, over here, Parathil Champions doing their best. They've managed to kill off a fair amount of the Numenorians, in fact. If we look through here, a lot of dead Numenorians and a lot of dead Parathil as well. The Eldol Nobles. I just wasn't able to lock these guys down. I've still got a fair amount of my melee cavalry, and I've been pursuing them and being as aggressive as I possibly could. And these are upgraded mercenary cavalry as well. They've got +5, and they've got, like, I think another 6 or 7, possibly even 8 damage. So they've got the power to hurt these guys, but the heavy armor and the high melee defense of the Eldol Nobles is certainly making that difficult. I'm trying to go for my surrounds, but the Eldol Nobles are so elite that they are just cutting their way out of it. And Eothod is using his momentum very, very nicely as well. He's not staying in one place very long. He's making me chase him, and that's going to allow him to get the most of his Eldol Nobles instead of having them bogged down in an extended fight with my cavalry, where they are likely to take fairly heavy casualties. Let's pop back on over to the other side and let's see what's been going on over here. It seems like the Shire has been endlessly picking away at the Dunlanders, and the Dunlanding clansmen have not really paid for themselves. They're really just out here as kind of an arrow target, and the Uruk-hai would have been just fine with that. I mean, they've got heavy armor. The Hobbit archers aren't really all that amazing, and now it seems like Blindness is sending another unit forward. Again, if you're going to use wave tactics, you need to have enough units to actually make the sacrifice of your lower tier units worth it. Otherwise, they just get destroyed, and you are beaten in detail, and that's not what anybody wants. So, why did he die? Why are these guys dying? Why don't all of them have shields either? No, that's a really good question. But when all is said and done, honestly, the Shire doesn't have much to answer the Uruk-hai infantry and Uruk-hai pike block in the center. He could lose half of his army here, and then the hobbits could charge at them, and they would really not have a lot to show for the effort and for the thousands dead. But it seems like things are going to kick off here pretty shortly, so let's pop back on over to the other side, and then we will conclude most of the fighting that's happening over here. So the Rohirrim cavalry still ascendant, still trying to support us as best they can. Thraustian shield bearers against the Helvellyn Marksmen have managed to silence them. They're doing pretty well. I would expect them to win this fight, especially with the numbers that they brought to bear against the Evelyn marksmen, but it's not really going to matter because we're losing in the center, when we are losing hard. I've actually had to fall back on my Greenway garrison archers who are now out of ammunition. I've been trying to use them to skirmish on the more pointy pikes as best as I can, but this is a desperation tactic, especially over here. Oh, look at this. I've had to throw in another wave of my Greenwatch garrison archers against Royal Legion of Armenelos and the Romano Legionaries. This is not a fight they are at all equipped to win. And over on this side, you can see the that our House of Cards has begun to crumble. The Parathil have moved in against the Romana units as they move to attack my Minotaur Roman Guardians. Their armor piercing is serving them in excellent stead against these units, and Engsfitz coming in when he did allowed us to surround them and to bog them down just that much more. But I've actually begun to fall back here, and so is Engsfitz with a lot of his better units. So the Guards of Kobas Haven haven't even seen combat yet. They haven't wet their swords in melee. My Menhiria sharpshooters I'm trying to use to the best of my ability to get a last few volleys off against the Numenorians, and to try and just bleed them for as much of their precious numbers as I possibly can. And so far, it's gone fairly well. I mean, we're still ahead. We're ahead by a fair percentage margin there. But we're moving in with some of our lower tier units now, and I imagine that this is going to start to turn around pretty quickly. In the meantime, Rohan in the center has held their ground well. I believe Gondor has been kind of filtering units to both sides of the frontier, but Gondor has definitely come in a big way to help out their allies. So a third army has moved to join the center, or the fight here on our extreme right, or our extreme left rather. And it's not going well for us. Our line is being rolled up. My best troops have been beaten back. The Wardens of Tyr and Gorthad, in particular, are on the verge of routing, and most of Dol-Amroth's forces are about to do the same. That really just leaves the Greenwatch garrison archers, who I'm sure will follow suit very, very quickly. But yeah, the addition of a third army, it's just too much. We've done well. If we kind of look at the slaughter here, it's very heavy losses for both sides. And Dor-winion and especially Numenor have kind of lost the flower of their infantry trying to fight us, but they are ultimately going to come out of this with some numbers still left over. It was a good fight, but it just wasn't enough. Minotaur Roman Guardians here now being attacked on multiple sides. The Parathil are on their last legs. There's only about 13 of them left. They are about to fall apart. This has given me a little bit more time to hit these guys with crossbows, and I think Engsfitz is also shooting them with perhaps some of his rangers. Now, I am getting a few units back, Greenway Garrison Footmen. I was trying to rush back to the front, but honestly, this is a point when I should have been cutting my losses and running away. So I am starting to realize the situation that I'm in. I've still got my men here, the sharpshooters, laying down some devastating enfilading fire into the Numenorians. This unit is probably best suited, I think, right now to cover our retreat, but the unit that I have over here is dangerously exposed. I've got some Greenwatch Garrison Footmen that I could use to help cover the retreat, but I'm still being aggressive. I haven't really made up my mind at this point in the battle about whether or not I want to make a last stand or I want to retreat to my allies elsewhere on the field, because Rohan is still standing as a bastion for our team over there in the center. They are currently unbloodied with their infantry at the very least, so yeah, it was a choice that had to be made, and I decided that I still wanted to try and bleed the Numenorians for as much as I could, and most especially the Heralds of Arendil. They were my number one target after the Eldolandi nobles, and so far I've managed to bleed them quite nicely with the help of Engsfitz. But let's pop on over to the other side, and I think the fight between the Shire and Isengard has begun in earnest, and like I said, predictably it's not going well for the Shire infantry. Try as they might, their lack of pikes and their lack of prowess in melee, it's really beginning to tell against me. If you look over here, it's just an absolute massacre. Even the farmers of Buckland, normally they would do quite well against units like the Uruk-hai infantry, but with the pikeman support, it's just not enough. Yeah, one of the Uruk-hai just literally got scythed apart by one of those farmers, but yeah, you can see them beginning to break. It's just a massacre here. Ooh, a nice rear charge here with the Champions of the White Hand. This is gonna prove decisive. The Shire is not well equipped to win this infantry fight. Half-orc Spear Guard, however, the anvil to the hammer of the Champions of the White Hand have broken, and they will disappear very, very shortly. But it's not gonna matter. Look at this Champions of the White Hand just pancaking those hobbits like it's nobody's business. we look at the percentage here, especially with all those dead hobbits, things have really started to swing in favor of the red team. Now, this is where things could potentially turn around a little bit. The Ents here charging into the flank of the Isengard phalanx. Blindness is doing his best with the Snaga skirmishers to toss his javies at them. Those armor-piercing javelins are going to do decent against the Ents, but they're only 5 damage, and the Ents have like 9 armor. So, you know, cutting that in half, I don't know if it rounds up or down, but still, it's not the most effective way of dealing with them. Crossbows, cavalry work really nicely. Other units like them, like Trolls of the White Hand, would be excellent to have at this point in the battle. And they're just kind of sitting up there on the hill. So this is definitely a missed opportunity here, I would say, for Isengard. Getting those Trolls of the White Hand in here and pairing them against the Ents, especially with the help of the Uruk-hai, this would be no problem. This should be a no-brainer win for Isengard. And so far it has been, but the Ents here, they could potentially turn this around. We've still got some reinforcements here for the Shire, especially the long bottom mob. They don't do a lot of damage, but they are armor piercing, so it could be decent. It could be decent against the Uruk-hai units, especially as they are exposed like this. But I don't know. It's gonna be a tough one. A little bit of inattentiveness here, though, on the part of Isengard. And look at that. Those Bjornings with the mass that they bring to bear and the armor-piercing charge that they have, they will smash through units like this if they can attack them from behind. And this is really unfortunate because this is a winning fight, and it seems like Isengard is letting it slip through their fingers a little bit by simply just being inattentive and careless. And Bjornings backing out again. Probably going to go for another charge here, but the pikes are dropping. The Uruk-hai pikes are facing the right direction here. This could be where the Bjornings begin to fall apart a little bit. Ooh, they got a nice charge there, though. Just look at the devastation that they can cause. They're very, very lightly armored, however, so missiles are great against them. Cheaper melee cavalry can wear them down. Yeah, and you can see their HP begin to fall away, down to 22. This is as devastating for the Bjornings as it is for the Uruk-hai, so a bit of a trade-off here. But they have turned their backs to some of the Hobbit infantry, so that might be enough. Well, the balance of forces now evenly matched. Although elsewhere... Oh, no. Yes, with the addition of the Ents flanking the Uruk-hai, things are starting to turn around, and this could be the decisive moment in the battle for the Shire, but we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. Things are still going nuts over on this side. And you can see I've tried to fall back with my Menhir sharpshooters, try to save the best for last, but I am being assaulted every step of the way, and this is something that I thought that Eothad did very, very well. When I began to retreat across this large open ground with really no support, I mean, I had my Hearthguard of Amansul and I was trying to zone out the cavalry, but it's one unit and the cavalry are far faster, so it's not exactly an easy thing to do. But he was really relentless and he kept on me, and he was using his momentum well, getting off his charge bonus to try and cut through my sharpshooters and reduce the amount of troops that I was going to be able to bring to the side of Rohan for a final stand against the victorious armies of the red team. Yeah, nice charge there. Caught me a little bit off guard. I'm moving in with my Hearthguard to try and pin them between the armor piercing of my Menhir sharpshooters and the spear bonus of the Hearthguard of Amansul, but it's tough. And Mithrandir's retinue from Gondor now doing the same thing. Great teamwork here. Honestly, they're really giving me what for. So I'm going to try and move my units out instead of countercharging to try and minimize the impact of the charge there. Those Mithrandir's retinue bodyguard are going to get, but they are still going to kill a fair amount of my Menhir sharpshooters, although potentially less than they might have otherwise. Yeah, Eldolandi nobles now retreating. Great job here, working in tandem to stymie my retreat and to stay away from my few anti-cavalry units that I was able to bring to bear. And at the same time, Eothad was moving forward with his infantry, and this might have been where he caught my Menhir sharpshooters, because I was not really able to move much farther. I mean, I could potentially turn around and defeat this unit, but they would then trickle in with another one, and then there's all these reinforcements that are now reforming and moving towards the front. So it would have been the death by 1,000 cuts, and eventually the big axe that ends it all, and that would have been all of these guys here. So Gondor, Numenor, and Dor-winion victorious ultimately. Let's take a quick overview of this fight here beneath the boughs of the forest. And it was brutal. It was brutal on both sides. A complete dumpster fire for everybody involved, especially over here. I was particularly proud of the way that Inks and I worked together to stymie Numenor's advance. We didn't have a ton of infantry, especially not a ton of hard-hitting infantry that we could really match them man-to-man with, but we used our resources, I think, efficiently. And look at this slaughterhouse over here. That's a lot of dead Numenorians, and we were able to inflict some really serious casualties here. And that's gonna percolate. That's gonna have some serious effects later on in this particular match, moving down to the end. But yeah, thankfully Rohan really saved my bacon here. They moved in against the legionaries as they were moving to intercept my Menhir sharpshooters. I am eventually going to I'm actually going to surround the Eldolandi nobles here, and then they're going to find themselves having bitten off a little bit more than they can chew, and they're going to be forced to retreat. And I'm very, very close now to some more reinforcements here from Rohan. Got a little bit of cavalry that he could use quite efficiently against the depleted Eldolandi nobles. And Rohan has now begun to shift their forces over to their left wing and begin to set up for a final confrontation here with Gondor and her two allies. And Gondor still has a presence over here as well, so something to be a little bit afraid of, I think. But there is good news over on this side. Isengard has been beaten. Somehow, that hopeless situation was turned around by the Shire. Steward of Dale has done an excellent job. And now some of the half-orc spear guard, I think there's some berserkers mixed in here as well. And the Trolls of the White Hand have engaged the hobbits, but it is far too little, far too late. These are reserves that could have won this fight for Isengard, and then Rohan would have been pinned between quite a lot of victorious armies, 4 armies in fact, with very, very few reinforcements from Dol Amroth and myself. But ultimately, Isengard is going to lose this fight, and then the Shire is going to be free to try and pressure Gondor, which is going to relieve Rohan of some of the pressure in the center and allow them to engage their enemies piecemeal instead of all together as a united and nearly unstoppable front. So little things like that can have consequences later on in the battle that you just don't know about. So as just a general rule of thumb, to try and win your engagements decisively and to preserve your numbers, and if you have to fall back like what I'm doing here. I lost a lot of my Menhir the sharpshooters. I think they were a full unit when I retreated them across the field here, so I lost probably about 50, almost 50 men out of this unit. It was really devastating for me, and that was really down to the way that Gondor and Numenor used their cavalry, so hats off to them. That was really good. Yeah, ultimately I think I lost about 75 marksmen. They're all dead in the forest back here. And Dor-winion and Numenor, they're mauled. They aren't beaten, they're not broken, but they are certainly worse for wear. I know Gondor has reinforced them and made up for some of the losses that they suffered in quite a big way, and there's just more and more of them cycling in. So the Axemen of Sarnak are over here, guards of Osgiliath, and some other nasty things as well, like the Fountain Guard and the Nimlothian Honor Guard. But there's something I would like to note here, and it's there's a little bit of blobbiness on the part of Inarius' forces, and that is something that I have noticed. I've played against Inarius, and I don't think he's a bad player by any means, but I have noticed that he does use very, very similar tactics in a lot of his games, and it involves basically setting his units up in a line and rushing, and it doesn't always pay off for him. Sometimes it does, but sometimes it results in him getting surrounded and maybe walking into some tough situations that he would certainly regret walking into after the fact. But I think it's now time to kick things up to 1x speed. A lot of the action has gone down on this side. I'm just really happy with how this fight turned out. It's just a brutal massacre all over the place. Inks and I were, for the most part, we were defeated. I did manage to retreat with some of my best troops, however, and certainly I still have my general intact as well. And this is a big deal over here as well. Engsfitz has moved to engage Gondor, and has managed to catch some of these Gondor archers in melee. Champions of Kobos Haven have run all the way over here, and they're winded, but it's kind of necessary in order to coordinate his movement with the remaining forces of the Shire here under Steward of Dale. And you can see them both moving in at the same time. Some great coordination here on the part of these teammates, and I don't think everybody was even in voice. Like, I don't think Steward of Dale was in voice with us during this particular game, but it just shows his ability to read the field, and I particularly found that very impressive in this game. So battling Brandybucks here, moving up with the Ents, and Gondor's reserves are really I want to say that they're under-equipped to deal with this particular threat. The Gondorians trying to pepper down the long bottom mob. It's going to see some success, but Proudfoot Protectors looking like they still have ammunition, and they're a pretty good unit as well. I think I mentioned it earlier in the army breakdown phase, but they're a pike unit. So, and that's something that Gondor doesn't have over here. A lot of their pikes are actually have moved to fight Rohan on the other side. So I think now would be a good time to start to slow things down just a little bit. Gondor is going to be in the first wave. Axemen of Lasarnak moving in here, as well as the Gondorian Spearmen. Fountain Guard moving in to support them. And some Nimlothian Honor Guard in close attendance as well. And that's going to be important. As units get more and more tired and take more and more casualties, and the army takes more and more casualties, their morale does decrease, especially from fatigue. Fatigue will kill your morale, and I think that's something that a lot of people don't necessarily realize. I've seen a lot of people run their forces around like this, and I don't think that running was really necessary. Gondor could very easily have walked their troops over this way and stayed with the rest of the group, but they're actually going to split their forces here. And so Gondor is going to be in the first wave, and Numenor and Dor-winion are going to be trailing behind a little bit, which is going to make this assault here a little bit uncoordinated. And Rohan, however, is going to be fresh and eager and ready to fight. And there's some stat penalties, too, for tired units like this. Well, looks like my mercenary cavalry got routed off. The Gondorian Spearmen not liking this. I think for whatever reason they dropped to winded. A little bit of lag there, and then they break. I was a little bit confused by this, but I think it was probably the numbers, combination of the numbers, the fatigue, and the fear that the Westmark marshals cause that made this unit break. If they were a little bit closer to the Nimlothian Honor Guard, they might have stood their ground a little bit better, but I was really surprised by this. I was overjoyed. It certainly gave us, as the defenders, a lot of hope that we could potentially win this fight. In the back lines, oh yeah, you can see this is where Rohan's mid-range skirmishers just become so important. They're just peppering the Gondorian lines, and especially the Fountain Guard are a great target. The Nimlothian Honor Guard, normally I wouldn't go after them, but a lot of them have actually turned their backs to the Rohirrim. And over this way, Guards of Osgiliath, I emptied another volley or two of my crossbows, and that's going to be my last one right there. But Rohan is going to really step up to the plate here. Look at this. Eastmark Spearmen tossing their javelins against the pike units, and that was something that we wanted to particularly target at this point in the battle. We knew how deadly the pikes could be. We just watched our armies actually begin to melt, so we were like, Rohan, you need to focus these guys. We're going to focus the pikes as well as we're able to with our remaining forces, but they were public enemy number one moving into this late stage of the battle, and you can really see that by the focus here. More Quindy pikes going to drop, I think, to about 25. Osgiliath Spearmen getting caught in a bit of a broken formation here, so they're not really going to have a lot of support. Pike units like this do really well when they have a shielded infantry unit that can be used to support them. So these Gondor Spearmen in particular would have been a nice addition here, and I think the combination would have overwhelmed the Eastmark Axemen. But the broken formation here of the Guards of Osgiliath, plus their decreased morale because of the missile fire and the fatigue and everything else, that's going to allow the Eastmark Axemen to do really, really well. I'm going to move in to aid my ally as well with them in here, the sharpshooters. The Elvelyn Vine Guard going to charge into the Eastmark Spearmen just as they run out of ammunition, and then I'm going to attack them in the flank and rear with some of my best troops, and those maces are going to go up, and the charge bonus is going to go off. And the Elvelyn cohort are not going to like this at all. Bit of an anemic charge, not as good as I wanted it to be, but at the very least we are surrounding the Elvelyn, putting that pressure on them, and without support, they could break pretty quickly. That being said, I think support is on the way. I certainly got some Elvelyn marksmen that they can use to really good effect here. Elvelyn cohorts and some Vine Guard have managed to scoot behind the line of Eastmark Spearmen, and what would normally be an easy slam dunk win here is going to turn into something of a desperate struggle for survival. That's a healthy unit of Vine Guard, still very well rested as well in terms of their fatigue. And another unit of Elvelyn cohort over here is going to get a nice flanking charge. So great job here on the part of DI. I'm going for a pincer move on this Eastmark Spearman blob. If they can break that wing, we don't really have a whole lot to replace them. I mean, we do have some other Eastmark Axemen over here. Rohan is actually playing really well with their reserves, and I love what they've done so far with their missiles. Got to say hats off to my teammate in this case. all along the line here. It's looking pretty grim. The Axemen of Losarnoch took a real beating on the way in because of the missile units. I think they managed to catch my Hearthguard out in the open, so I'm going to actually pull them out of there. They took some pretty grievous losses, though. It's kind of foolish on my part. But now, reinforcements have begun to arrive. So Gondor is starting to flag, and we're beginning to close in on the Elvelyn, but Numenor is going to come in like a wrecking ball with their remaining battalions of troops, and Dor-winion is actually going to support them as well. So over here, Fountain Guard have managed to beat back some of our best troops. The Westmark Marshals and the Minihithia Sharpshooters are actually giving a little bit of ground here, and the front is being pushed back. And now with the addition of more reinforcements, things are starting to even out a little bit on our side. But moving on over in this direction, Gondor is kind of struggling. In the long bottom mob, they're not going to do amazing against these heavily armored Gondor troops. However, they are armed with clubs, so armor piercing, it does help. The Ents, I think, have mostly expired, and there's a massive blob of Gondor reinforcements here. Actually, some of their better units, so some marksmen of Carandros and the Guard of the Citadel, fighting against the Haven Guard. All this is really doing, though, is delaying Gondor. If Gondor was moving in and pressuring us at the same time all of this was happening, that would be overwhelming force. And even Rohan's fairly well-rested and pretty decent army. Rohan's infantry in .97 is not bad by any means, but with all those extra Gondorian units, it would be really hard to concentrate our troops where they're needed. We'd have to spread ourselves pretty thin. And I think that could be pretty decisive. So these Mark Spearmen here, fighting hard against DI's encirclement. Rohan has moved in with some of their Eastmark Axemen to try and counter here and put some pressure on the Vine Guard, so it's not going all DI's way. But it's a tough one. I could see a little bit of breaking here, but the Eastmark Spearmen are also very much hanging in the balance in terms of their courage and their will to fight. I think one of the, not to toot my own horn too much, but I think one of the more decisive parts of this, the thing that's keeping us from losing entirely, I think, this heavily armored Elvelyn, is my maces. Yeah, they're able to do a fair amount of damage to those, to the heavily armored Elvelyn corps. Over here in the center, numbers are beginning to tell. The Axemen of Losarnoch has basically fallen away, which leaves the center broken and open. And Rohan is going to be able to surround the very heavily reduced forces of Numenor. So the sacrifice of both Inks and my own army was not in vain so far. The Numenorians, still very brave, still well led. They will fight on against these overwhelming odds, but I think the Axemen, especially with the support of some of these higher tier units like the Westmark Marshals, are eventually going to be enough to break them down. Over here, my Minihithia Sharpshooters still doing pretty well, especially against the Elvelyn Vine Guard, tired as they are. The Fountain Guard, certainly a threat, but not with 7 men left in the unit, so things are starting to go our way there. Over here, it's kind of in the balance. Got the Meadowseld Guard along with the Shield Bands of Rohan fighting against the Narnar Sentinels, one of the best pike units in the game, and the Nimulthian Honor Guard are in here as well. I mean, this is a tough fight. Oof. It looks like the Numenorian general has been cut down by the First Marshal's bodyguard, or maybe the I can't remember what they're called. It's like the, I don't know. It's like the Royal Guard, basically. Royal Legion of Armenelos pressuring the Westmark Marshals, but these guys have really walked through a lot of fire and blood today, and they're down to 55, and a lot of their HP has got to be missing. And the Westmark Marshals are no joke. They're very, very strong AP infantry. Not a lot of melee defense, because they have the two-handed axe and things like that, but they're not bad. Not by any means. Their armor score is pretty decent as well. I think it's about 10 or so. What do we got here? Eldolani Nobles getting into the rear of the Shield Bands of Rohan. I'm not too sure what's shooting them. It might be the Riddermark Archers. Kind of getting a little bit of friendly fire here. Not worth it to kill 3 cavalrymen. If the Shield Bands of Rohan could just turn around and toss 1 volley into the Eldolani Nobles, that would be the end of them. But it's not looking good for Numenor. And again, it's coming down to Gondor being unable to come to their aid. Where was Gondor, I ask you? Well, over there on the hill fighting for their life, if you were curious. Elred of Aldburg, oh, we missed it. They actually got a beautiful charge into the rear of the Royal Legion of Armenelos. We saw them drop from 55 to 32. And their fate is all but sealed at this point. They don't have the numbers to break through the Westmark Marshals. There's still 108 of them, and they are fresh, while the Royal Legion of Armenelos are highly outnumbered, winded, and looking really worse for wear. Meanwhile, elsewhere, the Narnar Sentinels might come through. We are starting to thin out a lot here, but I don't think it's going to matter. The Elvelyn are being beaten. I think the center has begun to collapse a little bit. No, the Numenorians still in the fight, still fighting the good fight against Eastmark Axemen, and they've actually managed to kill half the unit from the last time we looked. So they're turning this fight around. A real testament here to the skill of these Romena units. They are no joke. Although Rohan does have the numbers, and they have some cav proving around here too. So if the Aelred of Aldburg, that's the name of the unit I was trying to remember. If the Aelred of Aldburg are brought here against the back of the Romena Legionaries, this fight will be over in a second. Gondor Spearmen over here. It looks like they came back from routing and rejoined the fight, and the Eastmark Spearmen are kind of fighting for their lives here. Mark 20 pikes, well, very few on the ground, as are the Guards of Osgiliath, but still it's about 50 pikes here, and they've been bolstered by the presence of the Numenor Royal Guard, who are pretty tough. Oh, and there goes the Shire's general. Let's pop on over to the hill here and see what's happening. It looks like, with great effort, Gondor has managed to beat back what remains of Steward of Dale's forces. Proudfoot Protectors, still a lot of them left over, and they will do well against the Gondorians. Marsford of Carandos looking a little bit worse for wear, having lost over half the unit, but more Gondorian forces are moving to close in here and completely encircle the Proudfoot Protectors, and I think that's going to be all she wrote for them. I don't see a lot of other Shire units, and I am seeing some breaking though. So I don't think Shire is too much. Will be around for too much longer. They are not long for this world, as I am so fond of saying. Proudfoot Protectors being surrounded, now shaken. I don't think we're going to see too much more from them, which means that Gondor is going to come out victorious in this fight, and we're going to have to deal with them at some point. But what kind of shape our armies and their allies are going to be in at that future point, it really does still remain to be seen. So I'm going to kick it up to 1x speed here. The board has been set and all the pieces are moving into the final stages, as we are now down to the last 3,000 or so frames of this battle. More Elvelyn reinforcements moving in. The Elvelyn marksmen now out of ammunition. The second company moving in against the Eastmark Axemen, and they have held their ground so well, I have to say. Oh, the Guards of Cobos Haven somehow were saved from the wreckage of the Shire's army. Again, great awareness on the part of Inksvitz. He knew when to cut his losses, and it's really paid off for us. The Guards of Cobos Haven, still 26 of them. That's a great thing to have in your corner at this late point in the game. Now some arrows are pouring in, and the Elvelyn are beginning to lose hope. Over here in the center, more 20 pikes are being beaten back. And what do we have here? It looks like the Numenorians were defeated, and I think I could see some cavalry on the ground there. So yeah, it is going to be because of the Rohirrim cavalry. That's going to free up sharpshooters. That's going to free up Westmark marshals and more of the Rohirrim cavalry. Yes, there they are, the stars of the hour. The Aelred Aldburg flattened a unit of Royal Legion of Armenelos, came to the aid of our beleaguered forces on the center. They've now begun to systematically destroy what's left of the red teams of victorious armies. Excellent job on the part of Rohan. Rohan and the Shire were the real MVPs in this battle. Yeah, Inksvitz and I managed to do a fair amount of damage to Numenor, and it certainly helped out, but it wouldn't have mattered for anything if it wasn't for Rohan and for the Shire. So one beautiful charge here is going to flatten what's left of the Elvelyn's resolve to fight this fight. And boom. Mass rout. And that's going to be it for most of Dor-winion's forces. In fact, I think that is the last bastion of Dor-winion's armed might. And that's going to leave Gondor to fight this fight alone, and the Gondorian spearmen are going to break as more units begin to move in and flank them. That's going to leave the Numenor Royal Guard. They will fight to the death. These are fearless warriors of the mightiest nation on Earth, at least if you ask the Numenorians, and they will fight to the bitter end, but it's not going to matter. Surrounded on all sides by armor-piercing units and high-damage units, it's only a matter of time before they crumble. And I think that pretty well does it for the fight over here. Still a little bit going on as the another Loch Morale unit here. The Numenor Sentinels are putting up their last stand beneath the boughs of this what looks like an oak tree here. But they're going to fall very, very quickly to the swords and axes of the Rohirrim. And if we look at it here, 88 to 92. This is a damn good game. Started over here, fought all the way across this map. I just loved this game so much. It was so good. Everyone played really well, and I was particularly impressed with my teammates. Just fantastic work. Well, our Royal Guard starting to fight their way out of it a little bit here with the Guards of Osgiliath and the Morquendi Pikes. I'm shocked they actually managed to break that company of Eastmark Spearmen. But over here, with the help of the Rohirrim cavalry and the guards of Kobos Haven, and a little bit of help from my Hearthguard Amundsul as well, we were able to beat the rest of the army, so now we're going to be able to move in and surround them. I got some Gondor spearmen who've come back from routing as well. I don't know how eager they're going to be to fight a fear-causing units like the Westmark Marshals, but they are certainly going to get a nice charge here into the rear. Boom. Inarius not giving up yet. Inarius is in a similar boat to us earlier in the game against Numenor, I feel. Ooh, was that a troll with the white hand? Oh, yeah, what do you know? See if I can get a good shot of him outside the boughs of that tree. No, it's not going to happen. But as I was saying, Inarius is kind of in the same boat that we were in earlier, where if he can deal critical casualties to us on this side of the field, then maybe his remaining forces will be able to put up an effective last stand and do to us what we just did to Gondor and her allies. But I kind of doubt that that's going to be the case. We've still got so many forces left here. Rohan's got a lot of Riddermark archers left over. What do we have over here? A little bit of a scrap here between some of the guards of the Citadel. Rohan's already feeling confident enough to move against the Gondorians. Guard of the Citadel fighting hard. But outnumbered and surrounded like this, especially with fear units nearby, they are going to begin to fight to the death, but this does very, very precipitously drop their combat capabilities. Well, someone's general just died. I think it might have been Dol Amroth's. And that's not going to leave Gondor with a ton of options. Man, they're still trying to fight those Proudfoot protectors. Look at this. Oh, the Wardens of the White Tower were here. I didn't even realize. I think a lot of them were fighting up here against some of the hobbits. I'd like to know what exactly the Wardens of the White Tower accomplished in this game. I mean, they're exhausted, so they've certainly been fighting for a while, so I'm sure they've managed to get a decent amount of kills, but 'twas all in vain. The Proudfoot protectors holding their ground. I can't believe they didn't break, honestly. Well, I thought that was Rohirrim reinforcements, but it is not. There's a lot of routing units fleeing for their lives. And Hearthguard in a good position to begin to rain steel down on the Gondorians. It's not going to matter too much of their heavy armor and shields, but it will freak them out a little bit. Nobody likes to be shot from behind. It does have a morale penalty, and the Gondorian spearmen are definitely feeling it right now. Yeah, the Proudfoot protectors are being beaten down, but it's not really going to matter. 97 to 91, a really close game. But yeah, here comes the cavalry, literally and figuratively, as the Airwood of Aldberg charge into the back of the Gondorian spearmen. And I think this is going to be all she wrote. Yeah, we're starting to get some admit defeats there. Shield Maiden's going to follow up that charge, and the Gondorians are going to lose all hope and begin to break. That was a tough one. I think we had our final admit defeat there. Let's go ahead and slow things down, and we'll just take stock of the battle that unfolded between both teams here. Gondorians put up a great show up there on the hill. Shire somehow managed to win a losing fight against Isengard, and I think that was really down to the Isengard player just not paying attention. They're just straight up not paying the amount of attention they needed to. It could be that they got overconfident, but ultimately they were defeated, and they really didn't need to be. Another pocket of resistance there, and then fighting all along this front. Just brutal fighting. Everything was just nothing was a terribly one-sided engagement. Each side had something to bring to the field today. Then there was the retreat across here, where about 75 or so of my crossbowmen died. And then this fight here was just disgusting. Just unheard of loss of life here. Like even if the Red Team won this, I mean, could you really consider this a victory when 90% of your forces died? It's a calamity no matter which way you shake it, but it's a damn fine spectacle to watch. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. I'm going to kick it up to full speed there. And we'll go witness the final stand of what remains of Gondor. And there you have it. They have been scattered. After brave resistance, a lot of ups and downs for both sides in this team fight, but ultimately it's going to be the blue team that comes out victorious. Let's go ahead, turn things up a little bit here. There's the final admit defeat. An average victory indeed. Myself and Inksfits, we did okay. that's, I think, about as well as we could have been expected to perform, and especially against factions like Numenor and against Dor-winion, who don't have the highest numbers around. I think it really kind of worked out quite nicely for us. DI, I mean, it sucks with what happened to his cavalry, but nonetheless, the Elven infantry performed exceedingly well. Ooh, pardon me, especially with a little bit of I shouldn't say a little bit, the massive amount of support that they got from Aotheod. And ultimately, these two were able to beat both Angsvitz and I and push us back across the field. We were able to make it with enough of our forces still intact. We were able to play a decisive role later on in the battle. And yeah, it was just a good game all around. My sharpshooters did exceedingly well. Look at that, 222, 199. Very much the MVPs of my army. Everyone did okay. The Menhirdia Spearmen, 40 and 16. It's all right. Warrens of Tyr and Gorthad getting 103 though. Always a good unit to have. Royal Court of House Thorondor getting 100. Minotaur Roman Guardians with 125. It was decent. I was really impressed with how well my Cardolan army held the line. Really impressed with the performance of the Menhirdia the Crossbowmen. My Spearmen did okay. My Militia did about as well as you'd expect them to. But yeah, really cool game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. More to come. Stay tuned. Take care, everybody.